As many of you are probably already aware, last week, during President Barack Obama's State of the Union address, he announced his intentions to make sure that minimum wage goes up to $9 an hour. He also intends to index this rate so that it automatically rises to keep up with the rate of inflation. We do not have an indexed minimum wage right now. Minimum wage has only gone up 3 times in the last 3 decades, actually. The federal minimum wage has, and is now up to a whopping $7.25 an hour. Other states have made higher minimum wages through legislation, but the highest minimum wage in the country is still only $9.13 an hour. It's the only state whose minimum wage is above $9 an hour thus far, and that is Washington State. $7.25 an hour. Think about it. If you work 40 hours every week, no sick days, no time off, for 52 out of 52 weeks in the year, you will make, in no state in the country is it possible to live off of minimum wage. In no state in the country is it possible to live off of $15,000 a year. And that's before payroll taxes, which everyone has to pay. 31 states in the country adhere to the $7.25 an hour federal minimum wage rate and have not raised their state minimum wage higher than that. If minimum wage had been indexed way back in the 60s, and thus kept up with the rate of inflation, we would be making, at minimum, $10.58 an hour. Not $7.25, and not $9 an hour. Because the fact of the matter is that $9 an hour isn't a living wage either, and it isn't going to keep most people out of poverty. It is going to help, and I am in favor of the rise of the minimum wage. But we have to keep in mind that this is a starting point, not an ending point. It's the first step, not the last step. Even if we get this passed, we need to make sure that we pass further legislation that pushes for a living wage. No one who works full-time at 40 hours a week should have to linger and wallow in poverty, which is basically exactly what Barack Obama said in his State of the Union address. And let's also keep in mind our tipped employees. Make sure to tip your waiters and the people that come to deliver your pizza, and tip them well, because believe it or not, they only make likely $2.13 an hour. That is the federal minimum wage for tipped employees who make $30 or more a month in tips. $2.13 an hour. There's really no excuse for the rampant poverty that is in this country. 1 in 4 children in this country wallow in the depths of poverty and have very little chance of escaping it once they're grown. The cycle is never ending. You cannot raise yourself out of poverty by making $15,000 a year. It's simply not possible. You can't afford rent, let alone utilities, gas, food, on $15,000 a year. And that's the most that you can make. What happens if you're sick? What happens if your car breaks down? What happens if there's a tragedy in your family? You can't afford any leeway. There's absolutely no wiggle room. Many people end up homeless, couch surfing from place to place, if they're lucky enough to have people that they can stay with. This country and corporations in this country have never been as profitable and as powerful as they are right now. The 400 richest people in this country have enough wealth combined to wipe out poverty worldwide 4 times over. If our minimum wage had gone up at the same rate that corporate profits have gone up, then we would be making $21 an hour minimum. That is truly what they can afford to pay our workers. So it is not too much to ask for $9 an hour. And it's not going to negatively affect the economy. It's going to stimulate the economy. It's going to put the power back in the hands of the workers. It's going to make the workforce more competitive, of course, but you're going to get higher quality workers. And those workers become consumers as soon as they clock out. Giving them more money, more cash flow, enables them to buy more products, enriching the economy and making this a better country overall. Studies have shown that raising the wages of the people only raises the overall costs of products by 0.04%. This is not a negative change. Embrace it. It's time to understand that without workers and without consumers, those who are rich would have nothing. They would have no one to buy from and no one to work for them. We have the power. It is in our hands, and we have to demand it. We have to stop laying down and kowtowing to these people as if they're somehow better than us or somehow worthy of more. It's time to enrich our workers and give them a living wage and eliminate poverty in this country. And remember, we have to fight for our tipped employees as well. Their rate hasn't changed in over 20 years. We need to make sure that tipped employees' wages rise as well. They should be making the same as everyone else. They can't depend on their tips. Sometimes they come and sometimes they don't. We need to fight for all of our workers. We need to fight for the betterment of this country by fighting for the betterment of its people. We need to make sure we have access to living wages, to health care, to education. We owe this to ourselves, we owe it to our country, and most importantly, we owe it to our children. I'm going to dedicate this episode of Lady Rhiannon to my very good friend and co-anchor, Jeff Waldorf. We do a show together called TYT Community. Please check us out on YouTube and subscribe. Also, check out Jeff's own channel, Another Progressive Show, and check out his blog at anotherprogressiveblog.blogspot.com. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for the friendship, and thank you for the support, and thank you for this beautiful new microphone.